Good evening. Welcome to the Township of Whitewater Region Regular Council meeting for February 16, 2022 at 4:48 p.m. As we gather, we would like to acknowledge on behalf of Council and our community that we are meeting on the traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We would like to thank the Algonquin people and express our respect and support for their rich history, and we are extremely grateful for their many and continued displays of friendship. We also thank all of the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. And at this time now we call for a prayer, but I'm going to call for us to stand and we'll have a moment of silence for late Ted Barron. Thank you. Please be seated. So at this time, I'll ask if there's any disclosure of interest for this evening. Seeing none, move on. Thank you. We'll be going to public meetings. And we are going to zoning bylaw amendment. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region approve amendment to the zoning category of the property located at 224 Sturgeon Mountain Road. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted and Councillor Mackay. And this goes to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks so much. And as a result of this being a statutory public meeting, I'll just read through a quick statement. If any person or public body does not make an oral submission at the public meeting or make written submissions to the Township of Whitewater Region before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of Council to the Ontario Land Tribunal. The person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the tribunal unless, in the opinion of the tribunal, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Under Section 3411 of the Planning Act, if Council decides to refuse an application or refuses or neglects to make a decision on an application within 120 days of the municipal clerk receiving the application, the applicant or Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing may appeal to the tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. And lastly, under Section 3419 of the Planning Act, it states that not later than 20 days after giving notice of the passing of a bylaw, the applicant, any person or public body who made oral submission at the public meeting or made written submissions to Council before the bylaw was passed, may appeal to the Ontario Land Tribunal by filing an appeal with the clerk of the municipality. Thank you. And I'll just proceed right with the presentation of the application.
Do I not read first?
Oh, go ahead.
The address for zoning amendment is 224 Sturgeon Mountain Road. Will the staff please give an overview of the application?
Great, thanks. So the present application is submitted by Melvin and Lynn Langton. I believe they are with us tonight via the Zoom or the virtual meeting. So the property in question is located at the intersection of Zion Line and Sturgeon Mountain Road, 224 Sturgeon Mountain Road. The property currently contains a grain drying facility, has about 6 grain bins, 4 accessory buildings, and a weigh scale. There are also other accessory buildings on the west side of the property towards a little bit of a pond over there. Essentially what they're seeking to do is move the business as part of a succession plan entirely to this 5-acre property. So this 5-acre property is a portion of a property. Currently it's about 50 acres or so, and they're looking to sever off what's in yellow there, more or less that shape and that size. And it would represent, it'll have to be at least 5 acres in size. So that would, the zoning amendment is to position the property in an exception zone of the agricultural zone, so exception 44. And that would permit the additional uses of an agricultural commercial establishment, a contractor's yard or shop, and a truck terminal. So the contractor's yard and truck terminal would be incidental, if you will, to the agricultural commercial establishment being the grain drying facility. This is a similar application to what was done north of Cobden for the is it Miller Feed and Seeds that that currently exist there. So they applied for a similar application a number of years ago. So the property in question is located in the agricultural designation, so it's on prime agricultural areas, and the provincial publication does, or the guideline, if you will, does allow for farm-related commercial uses on prime agricultural lands, and the drying operation would fall within that category. So the provincial guidelines and policies support the proposed development. So staff are certainly supportive of the application. It won't hinder surrounding agricultural operations, so they'll still be able to farm the remaining lands. The property to other farms will be beneficial to the grain drying operation and the fulsome of the business. I will note lastly that so council did receive an email from an adjacent landowner, staff and the applicant with that adjacent landowner and find some resolution. So they've withdrawn their comments. So all those correspondences were emailed to council for your consideration. But certainly the neighbor is supportive of the application now that they've received that said clarity. So staff are supportive of this application and looking for council's consideration. Thanks.
Sorry, forgot my mic. I understand the applicant is on Zoom. Does the applicant wish to speak? You're on mute.
How is it now?
They're good. Loud and clear now.
I can't see anybody. I think Ivan has done a really good job on getting everything sorted out in this, because it is sort of complicated when you start into it. But as I say, I'm here for any questions any of the council might have for me.
Okay, thank you.
Can you move your mic on?
Okay. We'll open it up to the floor. Any questions if the applicant is present? Seeing none, thank you. So the motion is that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve amendment to the zoning category of the property located at 224 Sturgeon Mountain Road. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Can we? Okay, yep, we have our mover, which was Councillor Olmsted, and our seconder was Councillor Mackay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Langton.
Okay, thank you.
What? Do I not read that first?
Sure.
Now we move on to 4.2, zoning bylaw amendment, part lot 19, Westmeath Concession 8 EML, Pleasant Valley Road. Recommendation that the Council of Township of Whitewater Region 1 approve an amendment to the zoning category of the property described as part of lot 19, Westmeath Concession 8 EML, Pleasant Valley Road, and 2, authorize the execution of a development agreement with 2269805 Ontario Inc. to implement the aggregate impact assessment and environmental impact assessment. Motion is seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor Olmsted. And this goes to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks again. So the present application for zoning amendment is subsequent to an approval of a severance application, so consent file D10-150, and that application was approved by the Committee of Adjustment in October of last year. The purpose of that application was to create a vacant residential lot having an area of 31 hectares or 79 acres. The property is surrounded primarily by agricultural uses. However, there is an aggregate pit, licensed pit to the north, and another one across the road to the sort of southwest. So the present application is to modify the zoning category from extractive industrial reserve EMR zone to the rural zone. So the extractive industrial reserve zone does not allow for residential uses, and the rural zone would allow for one single detached dwelling. And the intended purpose here is to allow for just the one unit. So while typically you try to protect the extractive industrial lands to promote future aggregate extraction, the policies do allow for for the redesignation, if you will, if it's demonstrated that the extraction is not feasible and will not hinder other extractions in the area. So the applicant did file a study, an aggregate impact assessment, to support his application, as well as an environmental impact assessment. The aggregate impact assessment demonstrated that there'll be minimal impacts or disturbances for his residential use of his property by the 2 pits that are in the surrounding area, and further, there'll be no adverse impacts on the existing pits based on his proposed use. Based on the size of the lot, he'll be able to position the house more centrally in the 79 acres, and it'll be set back so far from the adjacent pits that it won't have any impacts to those pits. This report also speaks to a development agreement. So as a condition of approval for the severance, the proponent was to enter into a development agreement with the township, and that essentially implements those 2 studies, the environmental impact study and the aggregate impact assessment. There are some recommended clauses to be noted in that agreement, one of which is that the licensed or the drilled well be cased into the underlying bedrock so that no underground water impacts occur to the residential use. Vegetation be maintained within 150 meters of the property lines, and that a warning clause be included for future purchasers, advising that there may be noise, dust, and visual impacts as a result of those aggregate facilities. So essentially, staff are supportive of the application. Again, it's a subject of consent, a condition of consent. Essentially, we're satisfied with the aggregate impact assessment that demonstrates that there'll be no impact to the adjacent aggregate pits and no impacts to the residential uses. So we're looking for staff's consideration of this. I will note that we do have Catherine Curry from JP2G Consulting with us today. She filed the application on behalf of David Poisson, the owner of the property. Thanks.
Okay, with that said, then does she wish to speak?
Thank you. I think Ivan covered everything wonderfully, and I'm available if you have any questions. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. So we'll open it up to council members at this time. Any questions? Councillor Nicholson.
Ivan, can you just point out where the 2 pits are? I see I know one of them. I think the Desjardins pit, but I don't know the O'Brien one.
Yeah, so the O'Brien pit is just off of the map on the southwest side. So if Carmen would scroll to the left and a bit down, it's just across from the farm that's there on the same side of the road as the subject lands. It's in behind there.
And okay, probably the open patch just up from there.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, down. Right there. Yes. We need a laser pointer. Okay.
You want one?
He might. The second question is just and both of those are within the meters. I saw that, but the length of property in front of the subject lands along Pleasant Valley, is that a separate parcel?
No, in fact, it isn't. It's part of the same property. It's just shaped that way to demonstrate that road name is
road
there.
name?
So yeah, that's all forms part of the same property.
Good. And can this be further severed, or will this exception?
Certainly, the policies of the official plan do allow for more severances, if you will. I don't think it's the intent of the owner, but certainly those would have to be reconsidered as part of an amended aggregate impact assessment and the like. But certainly, the policies do allow up to 3 severances from the original holding dating back to 1971. So there could be opportunities. However, they would be considered on their own merits.
Okay. And so there's no aggregate underneath this property, or it's unfeasible to get at on this property?
So they've indicated in the aggregate impact assessment that it would be, it's unfeasible, if you will. Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure all that. Thanks, Mayor.
Councillor McLaughlin?
Thank you. And my question is for Ivan. Those conditions, will they be registered on the property?
Yeah, so as a result of the development agreement, that if council approves it tonight, the development agreement would be executed by the township and the applicant, or the owner, if you will, and then that would be registered against the land. So any future buyers their lawyer would be made aware of that notice on the title of the property.
Be aware of the drilled well and the setbacks and,
That's correct.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's my main concern. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay.
I think this is a good place to build because it's sort of marginal land. It's not prime agricultural land, it's rough. So I think it's good. What I was out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, thank you. So we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to item 5, announcements, and we'll go around the table. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I have nothing right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McLaughlin.
The only thing I have to share is the fishing derby that the Civitan put on was overwhelming.
Huge success.
I wish I had won the 50-50 because it was over $9,000.
Wow.
I think they've donated $10,000 to Hospice Renfrew, and I'm not sure what they're doing with the rest of it, but as part of Civitan, I'd just like to say the support was just unbelievable. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Mackay.
Not at this time.
Councillor Jackson.
Nothing at this time.
Councillor Nicholson.
None at this time.
And Chair has nothing at this time, so thank you for that. Now we'll move on to item 6.1, Infrastructure Ontario applications. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region authorize the long-term financing of the 2022 Freightliner tandem plow truck and the application for temporary borrowing for the Olmsted Jeffrey Lake Road project. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Jackson. Thank you. This goes to Sean, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So just to refresh everyone's memory, when we debt finance projects, there's 2 bylaws that need to get passed. This would be the first bylaw for both of these projects. One of them is Olmsted Jeffrey Lake Road, and that bylaw is to enter into an agreement to temporary borrow. So at this point in time, we've incurred roughly $1.8 million in costs at the end of 2021. So what this is doing is entering into an agreement. We were able to draw down funds for cash flow purposes, and then at the end of when that project is substantially complete, we could roll that into a final debenture at that time. And then the second bylaw is for to authorize us to begin the process to enter into an agreement with Infrastructure Ontario for the financing of the tandem truck. And the tandem truck I believe is delivered at this point in time. When I was writing the report, I don't think it was. We knew it was coming soon. So 2 different kinds of bylaws. One's temporary borrowing, and one is to start the process on rolling a debenture or starting a debenture for the tandem truck. So I guess just some numbers purposes. Right now on a 5-year loan, the interest rate is 2.37%. So that would be close to probably what it will be for the tandem truck when we go to finalize the debenture. So those estimated repayments would be $63,000 or $64,000. The borrowing rate right now with Infrastructure Ontario is 0.73%. So depending on our drawdown and the amount of days in a month and et cetera, the monthly borrowing would be somewhere in the vicinity, or the monthly interest payment would be somewhere in the vicinity of $1,000 to $1,500. And then what's important to note is we did budget to have a full payment, or I believe a full payment of interest and principal in 2021. But these borrowing costs can be capitalized at the end of the project. So because when you borrow, the cost of borrowing can be just like any other part of the project. So it can be rolled into, if at that time we deem that it's more beneficial to roll those interest costs into the debenture, we would. But that would be, we would look at that at a later time. So I know it sounds like a lot per month, but I mean, we're also drawing down close to $2 million, potentially up to $2.3 million of borrowing to cash flow us through this project. So with that, I'll pass it back to the Mayor for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to item 6.2. County of Renfrew infrastructure growth related policies. Recommendation is the Council of Township of Whitewater Region 1 receive this report for information purposes as it relates to the County of Renfrew's infrastructure options to address growth. 2, endorse the positions of the towns of Arnprior, Petawawa, and Renfrew, commending the County of Renfrew proceed with the Transportation Master Plan and develop charges background study outsourced to a specialized firm to ensure upper tier growth impacts are planned for the addressed by the county. And 3, encourage the County of Renfrew to consider all allowable services as part of the development charges study, including additional paramedics based across the county. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Nicholson. This goes to Rob, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thanks to Lane for preparing this report. Lane can speak to the public works impacts and Ivan to development charges, and Sean is here as well. So basically the county has seen some pressure due to growth, and if you look at the Statistics Canada recent release, you'll see that some communities in the county are growing, and what that means is there's impacts not just on lower tier infrastructure but also on upper tier infrastructure. And what those towns are requesting from the county is that as part of their asset management plan, right now they're only focusing on replacement, but they're going to have to deal with the impacts on their infrastructure that comes from growth. So the county has looked at different options. One is cost sharing with the lower tier municipalities, but I think we believe that if it's an upper tier service or infrastructure, the upper tier should pay for it. And then the other is that the county levy pay for these impacts. So if you have more residents and a higher assessment, you might be paying a greater share of those impacts, whether they're in Whitewater region or not. So what this report endorses is the positions of those towns that says the county should do its due diligence and look at a background study for development charges. Doesn't mean that it's going to do a development charge. It doesn't mean that it's going to apply a development charge the same across the county. It's a very diverse county, but it should really look at it. And it's not just for roads, it should look at it for a variety of its services, because under development charges, if there's an addition to Bonashire Manor or Miramichi Lodge or housing or a Cobden paramedic base as an example, as growth continues to happen, that the county should look at all of its financial tools to deal with its impacts on its services and not necessarily rely on the levy for everybody to pay for the impacts of growth that aren't being spread throughout the county. And a transportation master plan might be also good to not just look at its current level of service in terms of infrastructure, but across the board and take the time. And speaking to Reeve Rieger, who's sick today, she did mention that the county is going to have a presentation on development charges before proceeding to see if it's an option that the county council wishes to do. And they have gone out to look at a transportation master plan. So staff were asked to comment on this earlier on because of the kind of political nature of it and the diversity of opinions from the local tiers. We didn't really touch it at the time. This did go to Operations Committee and is going to County Council at the end of the month. So we found that with knowing the full sum of all the details that we would bring this forward at this time. So if there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them, or Sean, Ivan, or Lane can as well.
Questions? Okay, it was a tie, so we'll go ladies first. Councillor Jackson.
What I find frustrating, it's again something that the county is going to implement. We've got to collect and we've got to pay them. We already collect their taxes, pay their taxes, whether or not we get paid or not. This case, I would hope, is a different story, that we don't pay them unless we collect. That is the only way that I would be in favor of putting in such a development charge fee on behalf of the county. And it's not something I'm in favor of personally. And of course, I don't have any say where I work. If they decide to do it, then they decide to do it, and I just have to comply. So, but it is rather frustrating because there is a lot of outstanding taxes throughout the county, and the education portion gets paid whether or not those are collected. So I would not be in favor of that. That same sort of practice moving forward if that was the choice, whether or not we issue, a development charge on a building permit and it's not paid for within 30 days or whatever, then I want to make sure that we're not having to pay until it's all collected. That's my only comment.
So going back to the CAO, then this will be coming back at some time? Once county has their meetings and...
Yeah, the council raises a good question in terms of how taxes and DCs are collected, for sure. The first step for the county is they're going to look at it. Then they'd have to do a background study, and then, and as part of the background study, understand all the projects that could be part of a DC charge, and then they would look at a DC. So this is a 2-3 year process. I think what we're reiterating is the county should deal with the growth impacts on its infrastructure and not expect to cost share that with the lower tiers or force everybody through the levy. So if the larger places, the levy is not necessarily representative of where growth is happening. That growth doesn't necessarily match population sizes or communities, so growth is kind of all over the place. So what we're saying is the county needs to figure out how it's going to pay for its growth impacts and plan for it accordingly. But I think that the collection piece and the logistics of that would come back. But before the county would even get to that, they'd have to do a master plan and a background study and look at all the services and all the impacts the growth will have, because some communities are growing in Renfrew County and some aren't. Ours is growing.
So with that being said then, is this only for in front of county roads, or is this every road that flies onto a county road? Do we know yet?
So no, this has to do with the county. So we have a development charge that we've implemented. It has not slowed down growth. Just want to reiterate that development charges do not slow down growth. We've seen the opposite. This has to do with the county, growth impacts on the county services and assets. So it's roads, but then you see the list in the report there. Growth in population means impacts on long-term care, impact on housing, impact on paramedic bays, things on bridges and culverts. Right now, the county funds that through the levy, and if you're bigger, you pay a bigger share.
Okay, thank you. Councillor, you have a rebuttal? An update? Okay, go ahead.
So just to update further as well, as we all know, the county roads that are set as county roads are traveled by many and should not be limited to a specific municipality to pay for any growth in that area. We all know the Cobden Road here is traveled by out-of-towners. It's traveled by cottage owners. It's traveled by homeowners within Whitewater Region, Bonnechere Valley, North Agona, Wilberforce, Ameston, Bromley. Anybody that travels through, those county roads are traveled by not specifically to that municipality. So to add the development charges for roads, I 100% disagree. Paramedic services should be across the board because it's going to impact paramedic services all over, whether or not, as our CAO indicated, if they put a paramedic base here or not, it would still be beneficial to a number of municipalities that are close. And I just don't think it's the right thing to do for a county to do development charges. I say you raise it through the levy and everybody's paying for it through the levy itself, and not one particular municipality is going to be affected by it or not affected by it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Mackay.
I don't like to always agree with Charlene, but this time I agree totally with her. This just seemed to be, you don't feel you have any control over Renfrew County itself. They just do whatever they want.
We pay and we collect. Yeah.
So I'm with Charlene this time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Councillor Umstead.
Well, I don't agree with Councillor Mackay whatsoever, but I do 100% agree fully with Councillor Jackson. And I agree that I'd rather see a levy applied right across the board and make decisions from there rather than pick and choose the regions that are going to be paying for particular roads or particular services, and whether you do get a new paramedic building, whatever municipality. I don't think anybody should have an advantage or disadvantage. I think it's spread across all municipalities in the region. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olmsted? No, sorry, Councillor Nicholson.
I just need to go through an example, if that's possible.
Go ahead. Now's your time.
Well, I'm asking for that example, but I'm assuming that in the situation of a road, Arnprior's building a new subdivision. They need to extend a county road 2 kilometers to join the new subdivision to the existing infrastructure. Isn't the cost of that joining a requirement of the subdivision development? Like, why would we?
Do I speak to this, Rob?
I think it should be. The question is whether those municipalities are imposing that as conditions. So, but there will be some growth impacts beyond that. But I guess the question is, yes, in those cases, it should be part of the plan of subdivision. The issue is who pays, and if growth doesn't pay for growth, then everybody pays, and that's a philosophy. But a good example would be in our case when we impose a development charge on the rural area, we collect it. It doesn't mean that all the development happened on Sam's Road and that money can only be used on Sam's Road. It just means that the developer is paying a charge because there's an impact to that growth, and then it gets used for projects across the county based on however the background study is structured. So it's a question of the other question that's in here is cost sharing with the local municipality. So to Councillor Jackson's point, if they're doing improvements on Main Street and they want to cost share with us, well, Main Street is an arterial that serves all the way down to Eganville. So why would we cost share? So what I think the other towns were saying is, well, why don't you do your due diligence on a background study and do a master transportation plan? This cost sharing part doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So there's a variety there. But yes, direct impacts from a subdivision, and Ivan can correct me if I'm wrong, like an intersection would be within it. But the county also has to start planning, not just replacing as is, but should start planning broadly for growth as well, I think is the message from those other municipalities. We haven't commented on it from a staff perspective because we really wanted to make sure council gave us a clear signal on this one.
Okay, well, I don't know if it's going to get any clearer, but so can I get another example? I'm looking at anybody. Another example that's not as clear. It's not a subdivision developer's requirement. No, I want staff. Sorry.
I think like if, for example, if there's a county road that exists, it's just 2-lane traffic. And as a result of an increasing number of subdivisions in that area, increases the amount of traffic there, that growth, what a DC would do, that growth, the DC would help pay for the widening of that road.
The county road.
Yeah, the oversizing of the road, if you will. So that's kind of how a DC is used. Another example would be an ambulance station. So let's say the county deemed that there's a need for a 8th ambulance station as a result of the increase in population. Then they could use DCs to help fund that project.
Okay.
If they don't collect DCs, then they fund that through the levy.
And if I can, on Ivan's first example, town of Petawawa, population 17,000, lots and lots of growth, want the twinning of that road, there's a bridge there. The levy, we end up paying part of the twinning of the road in Petawawa, which is really, really, while there might be residents of Whitewater that work there, go on base, travel that road, but the question is, should the big growth through a development charge in Petawawa, which is causing some of it, should that be recuperated there, or should everybody pay for it? So it's a philosophical, because as Ivan was saying, yes, the intersection right next to the subdivision would be part of the plan of subdivision, but a number of subdivisions having a direct impact on that county road that now has to be twinned to facilitate to an access from the base would be beyond the subdivision. So that first example is a clear example that relates to the Petawawa example.
And I can just add, sorry, and also part of the DC Act, going back to the first statement, was the subdivision, for example. Even with as Watson's Associates provided, when we pass our bylaw, even if even if a municipality doesn't have or an opportunity doesn't have a DC, they recommended having local service policies, because as per the DC Act, so say if the municipality says you have to upgrade this road or no left turn, or the developer could say, yeah, no problem, we can do all this work, but without having the local policy, they can turn back and give a bill to the municipality stating that you didn't have the right to make us upgrade the road or the sidewalk, for example. So I think staff and I think stated in the other municipalities stated that do a background study and at least pass a local service policy so we can pass this on to the developers, for example. Another one is an example is, which kind of stated in roads, and most of how this came about in the county was more road related. I think as staff here, we also want to point out it's not just roads. In the report, it's ambulance bays, it's long-term care, anything that is growth related. So as of right now, our social housing and the county's two long-term care could be satisfied, right? But with the growth coming in, it might say that the county has to build additional beds, or the DC could be charged for that because it's growth related. So it's not just roads. It's going back to what Rob said. Say another example is Calboga Road, very busy. A lot of it's based on development in Greater Madawaska. So the argument could be, why should every taxpayer in the county pay for that road being upgraded just for the Gross and Greater Madawaska, for example? So that's the argument that the towns in the report are saying.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to, because you three have all said no DCs, but if the growth was, say, the projected growth cost at the county level was 10 million a year. So they do a background study over the next 20 years, we're going to need to invest 10 million in growth investment in the county. That would be shared equally across all the taxpayers, regardless of where that growth infrastructure was being placed?
Well,
versus
no, it
the
wouldn't
DC
be, it wouldn't
would
be equal. So it goes. It's not easy. It's not. It wouldn't be equal. It's based on assessment. So you're not going to pay the same as Councillor Jackson. Councillor Jackson's not going to pay the same as Councillor Mackay.
But lower municipalities would pay proportional to their assessment.
The taxpayer pays.
Yeah.
So our taxpayers would pay the county levy based on their assessment. So if a resident in Horton had an assessment of 500,000 and a resident in Whitewater had an assessment of 500,000, their county dollar to the county would be the same.
Yeah.
So they would pay through that levy for any county projects, operating capital, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how the levy piece would work.
And the alternative is you just put basically a tax on any development in the county, and that development would contribute to that 10 million.
Yeah, like, so I'm not 100% certain on if it's area rated or if it's, how that comes down. I think they'd have to figure that out during their study. But the idea would be that some of what they collected off of development charges could pay for that project.
Yeah.
And the shortfall, or if there was a shortfall, it would come from the levy. So they could use some of it to pay. If they had all of it, they could use all of it.
And that was my next point, as the development charges wouldn't cover it anyway, so we still come back to how do you split up what the DC doesn't cover. So and again, I'm not an expert, I don't have as much experience as all the rest of you, but I would like to know if they could define what that development cost is going to be, so we could budget it and see what that scenario is.
Yeah,
I would prefer to see I can't believe that we don't have a plan for growth at the county level. That would seem odd to me, but if it doesn't exist, then maybe we should do one. We see where it is, we quantify it, and if it's, you know, a difference of $1 versus 90 cents to not, well, why invoke a DC if it's going to make a difference of 10 cents? Like that's...
If I may, that's the whole purpose of them doing the transportation master plan and doing the background study, because the background study, just like ours, said Robertson will need to get upgraded with development in Beachburg, and Astrolab needs to get upgraded in Cobden because of development in Cobden. They would have to do through the background study, understand those growth impacts because they don't have that data. So the whole point, I think, is whether or not they have a DC, the background study forces you to come up with a list of growth-related impacts. And on all, to Lane's point, my point, on all the services and the transportation master plan. Doesn't mean there's going to be a county DC. You actually have to go and do a background study to price out all those costs before to know that. And then when the background study comes back, just like it did here, and it's at 13,000, we're not charging 13,000, we're charging 3,000, right, in the rural area. So what I think the frustration is from the towns is that the asset management at the county level is really just replacing as is with as is. And what they're trying to push, I think, through the transportation master plan and starting to have a conversation about studies is understand what are the future growth impacts and start planning for them.
I would feel more comfortable, and throw it out there to debate, but I'd feel more comfortable understanding what the problem is and then looking at options to fund it rather than the reverse. Let's fund it and then just define it. So I don't have an opinion yet on DCs, but I'd like to see what the county has for a plan or an assessment first.
And that will come with the report, but we have no idea when that's coming. Councillor Jackson.
I think staff have hit a number of projects that have caused concern for the county. One, Petawawa Boulevard. And there is a lot of growth in Petawawa, but the majority of the traffic is going up to base. And as we all know, there are a number of residents that work for the military that live throughout the county. So how can you just justify that Petawawa developers would have to pay for that growth? Because it's not only Petawawa. We have a number of military residents in Whitewater region, Amherst, Bromley, Laurentian Valley, City of Pembroke, like all over the place. So it's hard to say, okay, those development charges should come from the development, any development that comes from just the town of Petawawa. City of Pembroke, social housing in Renfrew, social housing in Arnprior. Those are the only places that really have social housing, probably Barry's Bay as well. But why should they pay the development for those social housing, pay for those types of projects? Because a lot of what happens is residents that need to go on social housing come from other municipalities and move to the bigger areas because they can't afford to have a car. They need to walk, or they need to have transportation, taxis to their place of work or whatever, or to close to the grocery stores. And when we're rural municipalities, it's difficult for somebody to live out in the country to be on social assistance or get social housing. So it is, I mean, you're pocketed. And then in Arnprior has been brought up because of the twinning there that may be required. And again, there's so many people from McNabb, Braeside. You know, a lot of times I go back way just to get off the highway. I'm from Whitewater region and I travel River Road, which is a county road, you know, right out to Highway 17. County road here goes to Highway 62. A lot of people will go through this way when they put, if they ever, and they're getting closer every year, put the bypass in. There will be an exit at Forsters Falls Road. A lot of people going to the park, going out that way, are going to get off Forsters Falls Road, which is a county road in our municipality. They're going to go up Cobden Road out to Highway 62. So why should our municipality pay for any upgrades for those roads when it's people coming off the highway to enter into other places? I think they're going to have a very difficult time associating what percentage of what should be covered. And they can do that. They can say, okay, it's not going to be 100% covered by that municipality or that particular development charge, and that it should be 5 or 10%. and this is what's going to happen, and this, they do the whole calculation, and it's quite a calculation to come up with who's responsible for what. I just think county should stay at the county level, should deal with it through the levy, because at some point in time, everybody's using those county roads and facilities. You can't say that no Whitewater Region residents don't occupy Bonnechere Manor or Miramichi Lodge, whatever the ones that are owned by the county, because our residents and everybody else's residents go there as well. So why should it be the developers that develop there? So it's very difficult to say that we all need the expansion. At some point, I think the population is starting to deter with regards to the older age group, the seniors. It's going to start going downhill in the next 10 years, and we know that by population demographics. So that really is not an area that they should be looking at, because maybe they're going to need to be looking at getting rid of some of those old age homes. Social housing is going to be huge. Social housing is going to increase. Look at the prices of homes. A brand new home here behind the school, I never would have anticipated that it would go for $600,000 in Cobden. A side-by-side duplex, whatever they're called, they're going for $400,000 or $500,000 in this village of Cobden. It's absolutely insane, the prices of homes. So I see social housing going up drastically because people aren't going to be able to afford it. We need to have development that is more cost effective for young people to buy and to move. And we don't want, you want to hope that it's not going to be social housing. But I'm afraid that it's going to get there. It's a drastic calculation, and I don't know how they're going to come up with it, is basically what I'm saying, and how is it going to be fair to each individual? Because if we've got a development charge already in the rural area of $3,000 in our built-up areas where those developments are going to have to be from the county, and to top it off another development charge, and I agree, it doesn't deter development, but it may. And the cost is then getting passed on to the person who is building, or buying. So it's difficult. I think it should be covered by the levy.
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just based on what council is saying, I think council wants, the next few reports are about growth and planning for it, that maybe if this gets voted down, that maybe the direction instead is just that the county plan for growth and ensure that the county is ready for growth. So I don't know what a replacement motion would be, but it would be something along the lines that the Township of Whitewater Region supports growth and encourages the County of Renfrew to plan for it as well in terms of its asset management and future infrastructure. And to the councillor's points, the how they fund it can be figured out later, but it's doing that master transportation plan and figuring that out, and then the finance piece comes later. So, based on what I'm hearing, but I don't know. I think Councillor McLaughlin may have had his hand up. Yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor McLaughlin. We haven't heard from you yet.
Thank you. I've been sitting here, excuse me, listening to all this and going, who's going to administer this? And I totally agree with Councillor Jackson, because I can see it being a real nightmare on who's going to administer it, who's going to collect it. Are we going to have to do that? We're probably going to have more staff to deal with this. I totally agree. I think yes, we all want growth. We all need growth. But I would like to see it straight across the board and a levy, like the councillor has spoken. And it just seems like this just turns into one big nightmare of administration. So that's about my comment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
I don't know, my impression is that and I know the detail's not there, is that the DCs would be applied and not spent in the area that they're collected. Although Sean kind of inferred that that may be an option. So you collect a DC in one township and then it would be reinvested in county development in that township?
So I'm no expert in development charges, but I'm just looking at our development charge. And we do collect 3 types of development charges. So we'll use the rural one, for instance. If we collect one in Ross of a development, there's nothing to say that it's going to pay for something it might pay for something in Ross, the former township of Ross. So I would assume that part of their study would be to figure out, is there types of development charges that would be, if it's a rural one, we'll just use the same word, if they collect it, can they spend that anywhere across the county for a rural project or something? Or there's I don't know, I'm assuming that there might be the option that depending on the type of development that it stays in that area. I don't know that. So I think that's what they would have to figure out, I would assume, is how they would go about doing that.
And I can just add, through the background study, if they went that, kind of goes that way, it would determine what is the same what happened in our DCs. What is all the growth projects, how much, what would it be? And then county council would decide if it's full, like the full limit, or would it be less? So same what happened here. And through the background study, the different ways how they figured out how to charge it. If it went that way, would it be every development across the county pays the exact same, or is it area specific? Is it if development Empire would pay X, and if Whitewater would pay less, for example? That would help be determined through the background study. And as Rob stated, also there's been no growth projected in their asset management plan, and that's where you see the town of Empire and the town of Petawawa, with not having DC, it's potentially hindering growth, because they don't, because the towns are saying we need this county road upgraded, and the county reference says, well, we don't have this funded in our capital plan, and they've been saying no. Take the boulevard in Petawawa. That's been going on for probably 8-10 years now. That it's been going back and forth and hasn't been projected, and that would be a prime candidate for development charges.
Yeah. So I just come back to, if it was, to me, the argument dumbs down to, if it's a $10 million a year ask for development investment by the county, the question is, does every household with an assessed value, do they all pay their portion, or do only the new builds contribute, and then everybody else contributes the rest? But I don't think we have to worry about the answer to that question. First of all, it's not our decision. It's counties where our Reeve gets a voice. I would really want to encourage them to do this study and get a grip on what the development investment is, where that development's going to occur, how much of it is significant to Whitewater, and then we can make the assessment on what that impacts our residents. If it's a huge increase in Whitewater taxes and what we collect and contribute to the county, and we see no development plan for Whitewater for 10 years, I want to come up with a cost sharing agreement that reflects where this investment's going and how it's going to impact us. So again, I want county to act on this. I want them to do that. I don't want this to turn into an argument about whether or not we should support DCs, because I don't think we're there yet. And I don't know how to reword the motion if that's needed, Rob, but I don't want to take away from the fact that this needs to be looked at.
So if I may help, Mr. Mayor, the approach that council's talking about is not the recommendation in the report, so you would vote that down. And I provided language to Councillor Jackson because she had first talked about her objection to it. So I provided her some draft language. So if you call the question on this and it's voted down, then the floor could be open for a replacement motion.
Okay, so are we at the point then where we can vote on this? So, all in favor? Opposed? Opposed, thank you. So then we'll open the floor up to any further suggestions on this, and we'll go to Councillor Jackson.
So I would move that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region reiterate that it supports growth and encourages the County of Renfrew to plan for growth and the necessary planning and investment in infrastructure to attract it.
So we need a motion and a seconder for this?
I'll move it.
You'll move it, so we need a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin, thank you. And now we open to the floor again? Or are we just going to move on? Okay, all in favor? Carried, thank you. Okay,
Sorry, Mayor.
yes,
I had one other comment on the original portion, only because it got, I think Lane must have stuck it in there on active transportation. Is it on, can we make an opportunity for me to speak to that or no?
make it quick.
The clerk is killing you with a look there. But I'll take, you're the mayor. Okay.
So if you may.
Yeah, well, let's do it
Please.
properly. Yeah.
I feel that it is done, like we've ixnayed it before, so we shouldn't watch him. Just so you know, just saying.
Is it going to help us move forward or not?
No.
That's all right.
No.
We can talk about
Okay, so we'll draw the question and we'll move on.
I think they will look at that, though, Councillor Nicholson. I think they, yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now we move on to item 6.3, Building Services Review Implementation. Recommendation of the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region. 1. Approve making the contract building inspector, plans examiner, a permanent full-time position, effective March 28, 2022. 2. Approve the setting of deposits for building permit applications. 3. Approve entering into a service agreement with the Township of Bone Shore Valley and Township of Petawawa for the provision of temporary building inspection/plans examination services by Whitewater Region staff. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor Mackay, thank you. And this goes to Ivan.
Yeah, thanks so much. We do have CBO Doug Schultz with us virtually here if there's any questions that pertain to him. Essentially, there's three recommendations from staff as part of this report. There are a number of items to discuss. So council was presented the Building Services Review report last council meeting, the extensive report. That report identified 5 areas of focus, and this report is to try to implement some of the short-term recommendations from that report. I will note that the department did prepare an action plan roadmap. It's attached as attachment 1, which sort of demonstrates how the department will try to implement all the recommendations over the next 3 years. So it's a sort of a work plan specific to the Building Services Review. So council would have been informed at the last meeting that sort of building permits have doubled or greater over the last 3 years. So since 2017, there was about 144 permits per year. In 2019, 2020, and 2021, there's been upwards of 300 permits per year. Each permit takes about 12.6 hours to complete, including travel time, inspections, plans review, and that equates to about 3,800 hours of plans review and inspections, which is equivalent to 2.1 full-time staff. So the first recommendation is from staff to recognize that increase in the number of hours, and we recommend engaging our current building inspector and plans examiner full-time, commencing as of March 28, 2022. So currently, we have a contract position for 1,000 hours per year, and we're recommending to council that we increase that to full-time to support the building services and our residents. Staff are confident in the current building inspector and plans examiner, and we're confident in the fact that he could certainly provide for succession planning for our current CBO over the next few years. The second item speaks to e-permitting. So we did receive funding from the province in conjunction or partnership with Laurentian Valley, the Township of Laurentian Valley and the Township of McNabb-Braeside to implement e-permitting. So the 3 townships are currently investigating different companies that provide e-permitting. Doug and I have investigated about 7 companies so far, but we're going to reduce that number to about 3, and we're going to set up meetings with the 3 townships. So funding was in the amount of $70,000 for the 3 townships, and that includes software and hardware costs. So that would be the software licensing, as well as hardware costs for tablets and computers. So we anticipate moving forward with that probably in the next few weeks and choosing the respective company. I guess essentially the purchase of that software will be in accordance with the procurement policy that's adopted by council. The third item, performance deposits. So council was informed at the last meeting that there's approximately 200 open permits or outstanding permits that are currently within our building services. So these are permits that date back to 2019, 2020, 2021. These are permits where people haven't called back for the appropriate inspections. Doug certainly reaches out to them through the winter months as time permits, and there's about 200 permits that are currently open. So what the consultant recommended that we implement a building permit deposit to incentivize applicants to close out their building permits and to alleviate this backlog. So staff have examined several communities, and we are recommending 2 sets of performance deposits, and they would equate to either $1,500 or $300. So for building permit costs greater than $1,000, so that would be essentially garages greater than 1,600 square feet or houses greater than 1,600 square feet. A deposit of $1,500 would be submitted at the time of the issuance of the building permit. So you would pay the building permit costs, you'd pay development charges that are locally applicable, and you'd pay also the deposit. And for building permits less than $1,000, then you would provide a deposit for $300. So that deposit would be held by the township until the permit is fully closed. So it puts the onus on the applicant to call us for inspections to close out that permit. So in the case where that deposit or those inspections aren't completed within a period of 48 months or 2 years, then the township would have the ability to retain that deposit as an administrative cost to follow up on that permit and to deal with it beyond the 2-year time frame. So that's consistent with other municipalities, if you will, in Ontario. Website application forms and guides. So we're going to look to do this in-house. The report did recommend trying to hire sort of a PDF consultant, if you will. But we've searched out other municipalities and we feel that we could develop guides, develop fillable PDFs in-house, and work on our webpage as well. So try to make it more attractive, more user-friendly and the like. So we're going to try to do that in-house. And the last item here is supporting neighboring communities. So we did receive a request from Bonnechere Valley and from the town of Petawawa. So certainly there's a demand right now for CBOs and inspectors in Renfrew County. I know the town of Arnprior also posted for a building inspector position, and so there's certainly demand for that, and that kind of endorses staff's recommendation to get the full-time building inspector position approved by council. So Bonnechere Valley is looking for inspection support on February 11th and the 18th. The 11th was last Friday, and the 18th is this Friday. And Bonnechere Valley, or rather the town of Petawawa, is looking for support for 13 days, extending from March 2nd to April 13th. So staff are supportive of this to show our willingness to work with our neighbours. All the costs for the service will be covered by those municipalities. They've sort of committed to that, and we would enter into agreements to support that. So certainly staff are supportive of that. We do understand that we're looking to hire a full-time inspector, and this might demonstrate some opposition, like opposite to that, but certainly we could accommodate this this support before April while the time is a bit slower. So those are there's 3 recommendations coming out of this report. I'd be glad to answer any questions if there are any. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jackson, please.
At this particular time of the year, I'm in support of supporting the other municipalities, but as you know, our permits are saying 2 point whatever full-time building inspectors. So I think we have to be very cautious as to how much time in the future that we give to other municipalities, even though I know a municipality who will be looking for a building inspector as well to do a retirement shortly. And you just want to be cognizant that you're serving your municipality first. The other issue that I have is, are we going to continue to get the growth and the development that we have currently? I would hope so, but upon the retirement of our CBO, I would like you to take a hard look at replacing, if the current position that's moving to full-time, if that position was the successful person to move into the CBO position, then I would suggest that you look at the numbers before you replace that other position. Not sure when Mr. Schultz decides to retire, but I think that needs to be looked at and not just a replacement at the time. Right now, we need them. In 2-3 years, are we still going to need them? I think it's a great opportunity to do, I can't think of the word, well, to make sure that he's trained, the new guy's trained and is ready to take over.
Succession.
Thank you. Succession planning. At this time of the day, I'm usually about whipped. And I think that's a great opportunity. I just want the CAO and everybody to be aware of the fact that they do need to revisit that again upon Mr. Schultz's retirement. And if it supports it, then all for it. But I think we come first as far as sharing our resources out, and that's very important. Everything else I'm much in favor of, but I just wanted to bring that particular item to their attention. But I do support hiring Mr. Buttle full-time. There's no doubt about it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I also support the motion. I could answer a little bit of Councillor Jackson's questions about growth. In our own business, we were kind of a little bit leery as well, whether this is sustainable or not. And I can tell you that this year is going to be a banner year above last year's banner year, above the year before that's banner year. There seems to be no end to the growth right now in this region. As you know, there's some developers trying to capitalize as much as they can, and they can only capitalize with as much labor as they can actually bring in. That is the bottleneck. But I could tell you that the demand is, except, well, you just mentioned the 600,000. Well, they're going for more than that now, and they can't get them up fast enough. So the growth is there. Permits, we've seen them, as Ivan said, they've tripled over the last few years. I'm very, very concerned that if we don't make this move, I do know that within the next, I believe I've heard is 18 months, there's actually 6 positions coming up within a half-hour drive of Whitewater, with a half-hour drive of Cobden, 6 positions coming up for CBOs in other regions. So there are a lot of retirements coming up fast. So I'd be concerned if we don't make this move. There's lots of opportunities out there. I understand now Petawawa is fully outsourced, if I'm not mistaken. So they lost a couple of gentlemen. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, so they've been using registered code agency, it's called. So it's a company that's registered with the province. Yeah, so it's RCM is the company. Yeah, so they've been using a consulting firm, if you will, to do plans review and inspections.
Right. Okay. So on that part, I'm 100% in favor of making that position full time. I do have a little concern on the permit. Not that there's an amount, there's a fee. Just based on the start time of a permit on a house right now, there's a lot of homes that I'm looking across the desk here. 2 years, when you start the house, you may think it's all fine and dandy, but when you're waiting 18, 20 months on a fridge and freezer to come in, and siding, and there's every week it seems to be that you kind of get another notice that rather than 2 months now, it's you're waiting 8 months on a particular material. So 2 years ago, 2 years would seem like a long time. Now you're lucky to get a house completed within that time frame. So I'm a little concerned that it may not be enough time now. And even if you get the materials, and I'm a prime example of that, I've been waiting now 7 months to get contractors to come back to my home to actually finish some work on it. So you may not think that's a long time, but there's half a year gone just waiting on guys to come back to finish some stone work and that a lot of that stuff has to be completed in order for your house to be assumed completed. So I am a little concerned that the 2 years isn't long enough, which I never thought I'd say, but I'm saying it. Thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Nicholson. Okay.
You're doing right. Good. I say I support the motion as well. And I just had a couple comments to influence it, if possible. The 2-year past the date, the same that Councillor Olmsted. My question was, could you extend beyond the 2 years? If so, how and with what justification? Because there could be a myriad of, whether it's supply or labor or death in the family. We just would have to have a process to address that it would be equal to everyone. And I was just wondering, that deposit closeout, would it include the grade inspections, which was highlighted by the consultants as an issue for us to follow up on because of lack of expertise or time? I can't remember what it was. But does it exclude that or include that? And is that factored in the 2 years?
Yeah, so I would say that to complete the building permit, the grading has to be in place and approved. So the grading would have to be done as well to get your deposit back. We don't often ask for final grading, more specifically in the urban areas. We would ask for that because it does have the ability to affect other lands, more so anyway. And there's approved grading plans as part of plans of subdivision and the like. I think that Doug and I did discuss the time frame. Rather than trying to have people submit extension requests, I think that maybe we could just extend the time frame to, say, 30 months or 36 months for the performance deposit. One thing I did note is that one thing I do need to note is that we have to go to a public meeting to allow for public comments as a result of this change in fee. So if council supports this motion tonight, we still have to notify the public, put an advertisement in the paper, and come back to council as a public meeting. So certainly Doug and I could examine the timeframes and see if we should be looking at sort of 30 months or 36 months.
Perfect. Okay. Once it expires, so at say 36 months or 30 months, your deposit would expire, you'd lose your deposit, but the house still isn't done. So you still have to go back there and inspect. Do you charge them more to go back, or is that part of the initial permit fee, or what happens for people that fail to complete with the deposit?
Yeah, so I don't know what you're saying over there, Rob, but I would say, yeah, the deposit, we would retain the deposit just because we've probably been trying to reach out to them with letters and staff time to reach out to them to close out their permits. I would say they could be subject to additional inspection fees, and the rate, I think it's $80 per inspection. But typically what happens is they'll go to occupancy, get their occupancy, and not call the department back. So there's only really one inspection left, maybe some minor things in the grading. So we wouldn't anticipate huge additional costs, but certainly maybe one inspection fee in addition to us retaining their deposit.
Perfect. Good. That's a big motivator. The last one is just a question on the additional employee. And I noticed that you had listed a number of training courses and he was going to challenge a qualification. I wanted to confirm, are we covering that training time and costs for those qualifications?
Yes, most certainly we are. Even as a contract employee, we are covering that cost just because it serves value to the township and to the department. So even as a full-time staff, the township would be covering that cost, and it's budgeted annually.
That's perfect. I'm in support. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councillor McLaughlin.
Thank you. I certainly agree with Councillor Jackson. I think it's good progression. And I've lost words. I can't think. Success. Sorry. But I think it's great because we need to be covering ourselves. I'm just wondering if CBO Schultz has anything to add to any of this conversation. If council wouldn't mind, I'd like to hear some of his comments if he has.
Go ahead, please, Doug.
Not a whole lot, Darrell. I think you're doing a wonderful job there tonight. No, definitely, it's been a very busy year, the last couple of years, and Chris is right. It's not going to slow down for a year or two anyways. I don't participate in it because we probably have 10 houses that weren't even started last year, because people couldn't get contractors and that. And I know for sure that there's 19 houses getting built this year from 2 different contractors. So I don't foresee any slowing down. I do agree with Chris. The time frame to build a house and to get it finished is very hard now with supply and demand and what's going on. We could, like Ivan said, we can change that to 30 or 36 months. That's not a big issue. I think we have an opportunity with Sam that he's a young person in their community and he's willing to learn. And with some years of training, he will form into a good chief building official. And I think with the demand out there right now, it's good that we lock him down and make him one of our own.
Thank you, Doug. Councillor Mackay.
I'd just like to say that it's a good idea to lock the guy down because Doug does not look that young. Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Now we'll move on to item 6.4, Final Draft Growth Readiness Action Plan. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region receive the Final Draft Growth Readiness Action Plan as a guiding document to help support and plan for future growth. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor Mackay. Thank you. This goes to Ivan.
Yeah, thanks so much. So council be aware that the township entered into a partnership with Greater Madawaska in the issuance of an RFP to prepare 3 documents: the zoning bylaw review, which is underway, the development standards also underway, and a growth readiness action plan. So this document here is one of those 3 projects. It's the Final Draft Growth Readiness Action Plan. It was prepared by EcoView and Strexer Harrop Consulting Groups. Kent Randall, which is the principal at EcoView, presented to council on December 1st, gave a quick overview of the project. And this is the first of the 3 projects that's been completed. So this document was done first as it will help shape the policies of the zoning bylaw and the development standards as well. So the full document is attached to the report as attachment number 1. It highlights three priority areas, one being the administrative capacity, second infrastructure, and thirdly economic development. And within those 3 areas, there's 19 action items to be implemented between 2022 and 2024. So another list of actions to do, similar to the building services review. Staff reviewed the recommendations within the action plan, and we are feeling capable of completing some of them in-house, 5 in particular. So creating a primary contact for potential developers. So currently, certainly they would probably contact me, but making that a little bit clearer on the website and other different social media avenues. Secondly, prepare education and training to the existing staff on growth. So that would be our community development coordinator and CBO and other staff relating to growth and economic development. Creating a database and spreadsheet to track and follow up on investment inquiries. So certainly I receive calls from people seeking to invest in our community, and I don't really track that to any way, shape, or form. So developing a spreadsheet of sorts to be able to reach out to them maybe a month or 2 later after the initial consultation. Create an inventory of vacant commercial properties and storefronts, so just having a list of available lands for investors to have a list to verify if there's any opportunities, and to add a page on our website for new internet and cellular projects. So that's up and coming. There's a number of towers going up, so it'd be good to advertise that on our website. So the Growth Readiness Action Plan involved local stakeholders, developers, and different stakeholders, staff, councillors, and the use of an online survey and one-on-one interviews. So there's been some consultation in the preparation of this document. So staff are recommending to council that they receive the document at this time. The next steps would be to try to implement those 5 in-house actions, and then as part of our future work plans for the department, we would incorporate some of these actions within that. Thanks so much.
Thank you for that. Councillor Jackson was first.
I think this is an amazing document. I love the last page of it, My Whitewater Life. I have a question with regards to Instagram and all of Twitters and all that. The hashtags that we have currently, or at least that refer to us currently, Whitewater Region. I often use hashtag Whitewater Region when I post sunset pictures and that. Do you actually own a hashtag, or like who starts that up, or how do we get associated with that? And how do we get associated with, I know there's a Whitewater Region Fire Department. Is there a process to that? And can we track those hashtags somehow? I have no idea. I know how to post, but I don't know how that all works. But I think this is unbelievable. It's a great plan in place. Some of the dollar amounts will have to be decided each year, and I hope that the council in the future take a good look at it and whether or not it's the proper time to do some of these things at that time, because they do have specific time frames, and whether or not staff and the budget allow the time and the money to be spent during those time periods, because we have done a number of projects that are quite intensive and continue to move forward. I'm amazed at staff and how everybody is on board with moving forward with the different projects, and kudos to you guys. This is well done.
Thank you. Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, I echo that to a T. I remember almost 8 years ago when we first started council, we were way over here. And one of the reasons I ran, and I keep saying, is I wanted a plan. I wanted to know where the hell we were going as a township. And now we're way over here where, we've got all these studies done, but we're following them, we're actioning them. We're holding people's feet to the fire, and now we've got this really good map of what we want to accomplish within the township, and it much more professional than I ever thought we could be. This is fantastic stuff. So I look forward to implementing some of these programs and documents over the next couple of years. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, call for a vote. All in favor? Carried, thank you. Now we'll move on to 6.5, community profile. Recommendation that the council receive the draft community profile for informational purposes. Motion and seconder, please. Councillor Olmsted, Councillor Jackson, sorry. This goes to Ivan, please.
Yeah, thanks again. So what we have in front of us here is a report, covering report relating to our community profile, which was done in-house, and I think it was identified as an action item in the previous action plan. So over the last couple of years, staff have been working on developing this community profile. So a community profile encompasses a summary of baseline conditions and trends in the community. It's sort of used to try to entice investors in our communities, entrepreneurs and investors. So we could provide them with this community profile, and it provides them with a summary of costs to develop and demographics and different trends in our community. So this item was identified in the Council's 2020-2030 strategic plan, as well as in the department's work plan over the last couple of years. So the draft community profile in front of you here speaks to labor markets, demographics, property taxes, water, wastewater rates, a variety of rates, building permit fees, our CIP, transportation networks, education, and a variety of different things. So we do understand that it's a point in time, so this thing will need to be updated frequently, maybe every year or twice a year, to ensure that the accuracy of the information. So staff are looking for any comments from council. It's in draft form now, and if there's any additional pages we need, any changes, we'll be glad to make the changes. Considering Statistics Canada just came out with some new numbers, so we'll be updating it probably in the very short order. Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, if I may just jump in here, I just want to point out that this was done in-house. So Debbie put this together with Ivan's kind of support. So when I saw it, I was like, to the earlier comments, like, wow, we know what we're doing, but this is pretty fantastic work and really great to see. But I just wanted to highlight that this was done by staff. So kudos to Debbie and Ivan and the whole team here. But Debbie did a really good job pulling this together.
You took my thunder. I was going to bring that up.
Sorry.
That's all right. Councillor Jackson.
This is an amazing document. It is thorough. I've certainly passed it on to some of our staff, and the questions were, well, who did they get to do it? And I'm very happy and very pleased that it was done in-house. Very well done. Have a couple of concerns, and I think I emailed you as well, Ivan. So Pembroke General Hospital is referred to now as Pembroke Regional Hospital, has been since the Civic Hospital was gone. And then I like that the email for the seniors is seniors at, and I would recommend that we do the same for any other email address that's in there, that we use an alias email address, so then you never have to worry about changing it. It can stay the same, and certainly updating the new stats would be great. But wow, very impressive. Like Debbie did an amazing job. Very well done.
It's nice to see it all in writing. We've talked about many different things over the years, and we've never actually had one document to look at. Anyone else?
One further question, sorry.
Okay, go ahead, please.
Sorry, one further thing. So while I did try to email it, and I know you'll want to email it, it's too big. So I don't know how so what I did was I copied the link from the meeting and was able to send it that way. So you may have an issue with regards to that if you go to email it to anybody. So I don't know how to reduce it or whatever, but I think because it's such high quality, that's probably why it's too big to email. And but other than that, I think we need to find out how you can do that so that you'll be able to, and Debbie will be able to move that along quicker.
I printed it at home, it printed fine.
Printing, but emailing.
Okay.
So as an attachment, it was just too large. It wouldn't send.
Oh, okay. Good to know. Councillor Nicholson, did you have your hand up? No. No? Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. And that'll be a 5-minute break, please. Thank you. We're back, and we will move on now to item 6.6, Integrity Commissioner Reappointment. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the reappointment of the Integrity Commissioner for another 3-year term. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor McLaughlin, thank you. And this goes to Carmen, please.
Okay, sorry, thank you. In 2018, we appointed an Integrity Commissioner, Tony Fleming of Cunningham and Swan. He had a 3-year term. So we are recommending that he does another 3-year term. His term was up in January. So we're recommending another 3-year term. To date, we've had, as of January 2022, we've had no investigations. Financial implications is there's a $150 fee to submit if somebody has a question or a concern. And if there is a investigation, they charge $2.95 an hour plus taxes. And they were both, our department and Cunningham Swan has been contacted to make sure that there was no issues with them continuing, and they are in support of it. So if there's any questions, I'll be happy to answer anything.
Any questions? Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, just one question. I see, I believe he was also the commissioner for Laurentian Valley, Renfrew, and Bonnechere Valley. Is that going to continue as well? Do you know?
I'm not sure, but I'm thinking they'll probably, I'll probably all do the same extension. I haven't reached out to anybody yet, but I'm thinking they'll probably as well.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Councillor Jackson?
You'll just update the names at the bottom of the agreement?
Yeah, does it say, I think it says Rob, doesn't it?
It does?
It does. I just stroked out, put my name in.
No, but
Oh,
the
is there
mayor?
more? Oh, yeah, I'll change it. I don't know. I haven't read it.
And the date as well. The date and the names, just make sure
They're all straightened out.
Yeah.
I believe, and I'm not 100% sure, and I apologize for this, but I did reach out. This might be the old agreement in here.
I think so.
I had to get a hold of Cunningham Swan. They were going to put a new agreement together. I don't believe I received it at the time I submitted this report.
Very good.
Mr. Mayor, if I can just add one quick thing, is that under the old act, if a councillor was unsure about conflict of interest or anything related to the code, they had to get their own legal advice. Under the new act, the Integrity Commissioner you can proactively go to them and get advice. And although we haven't taken them up on that offer, if you're encountering any kind of potential conflict or not, or any clarification, I just wanted to reiterate that the Integrity Commissioner now has the duty to provide advice beforehand, not just the investigation. And then as we're planning for council orientation in the new council, we'll have the Integrity Commissioner come in and provide orientation as they did in 2018. So we're in good hands with Carmen and following up with Cunningham Swan.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Seeing none? Have call for a vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. We'll move on to 6.7, FileHold Records Management Software. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the single source award to Image Advantage Solutions, Inc. for FileHold Electronic Document and Records Management System to manage electronic records. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Jackson. Thank you. This goes to Carmen.
Okay. Image Advantage offers the FileHold Electric Document and Records Management System. This system helps manage records in a way that are easy and searchable and retrievable, and it uses retention rules. Currently, we use Image Advantage to scan our bylaws, our minutes, and they also just currently did our building files. All our rolls are all scanned now. They make it so that it's easy to use, PDF, searchable, accessible. It's a really great system. So this will also help, using this system will also help with updating our building file, the website, it just makes it more accessible. We applied for the modernization intake, number 3. We were successful with it, so we did get a grant for it. I'll just start with this part. So the financially, FileHold was offering a 15% discount for until the end of December. Because we were waiting for the municipal modernization grant, we didn't meet the December deadline. But I talked to them about it, and they're still going to offer us a 10% discount. So we budgeted $23,000 in 2022 for FileHold. With the grant, our cost will only be $5,597. Go ahead, I'm sorry. Any questions? This is a great system. I'm all over the board, so if you have any questions, just ask me. Yeah.
Any questions? Seeing none, call for vote. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we'll move on to 6.8. Oh dear. What did I do with it? I lost it. That's okay. No, I lost it. Okay, so because of things that have transpired since our agenda come out, we're changing our motion. So I'll just read the whole thing. Whereas effective February 17th, 2022, Ontario will further ease public health measures. And effective March 1st, 2022, Ontario will lift proof of vaccination requirements for all settings. Whereas Section 25 bracket 2, bracket H of the Ontario Health and Safety Act states that the employer is required to take every precaution reasonable in the circumstances for the protection of a worker, and the township has done so through proactive measures, and therefore be it resolved that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region direct that the policies establishing vaccine requirements with regards to COVID-19 be repealed effective March 1, 2022, and Council thanks that those who have adhered to the policies, either through vaccination or regular rapid testing, to ensure a safe workplace. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Olmsted. Thank you. And this goes to Rob, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we, council in its wisdom, when this was approved, required that we come back to council in February. So when the agenda was published on Thursday, the world was one way, and then on Monday, the Premier made an announcement lifting vaccination requirements across the province on March 1st. So that's why we've made the change. In the report, though, the original report, it speaks to the number of people that were under the policy and kind of the great response we've had from staff and the volunteers on committees to keep everybody safe, and either with different layers of protection, either through vaccination or rapid testing. So I just want to thank everybody for their patience. It's been a hard couple of years. It's been a very difficult couple of months with Omicron, and I think we're making our way through it. So I just want to point out that Jordan and the team in Arenas are getting ready for the changes taking effect on Thursday, and then also the proof of vaccination provincial requirements are being lifted for Arenas mostly on March 1st as well. So staff are implementing these changes across the board. But so this is in response to what the Premier announced, and we did get a note today from the acting medical officer of health for the county, who also recommended that municipalities follow suit with the province and lift their vaccination policies on March 1st. So Carmen has prepared a revised bylaw. So when we get to bylaws, we'll swap it out for the one that will repeal these policies as of March 1st.
And just to add, not forgetting that masks wearing will still be in play after March 1. We can't forget that. That's about the only thing we're going to be left with, I do believe, at that point. So it should be a little easier to maintain decorum at that time. Any questions, please? Seeing none, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to 6.9, Festival Hall for the Performing Arts. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve a one-time contribution of $2,500 gold partnership level toward Festival Hall Centre for the Performing Arts 2022 renovation project. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Olmsted. And this goes to Rob, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we received a request from the three mayors of Laurentian Valley, Pembroke, and Petawawa. You can tell from the report that we're not partners in Festival Hall, and each of those municipalities, you can see they're supported at $1.25 per resident. And thank you to the Treasurer of Laurentian Valley for those statistics. So Petawawa annually 18,000, Pembroke 13, and Laurentian Valley close to 10. So they're doing a project. It is a regional arts and cultural facility. We don't have many of those in the county. And as I note in the report, we don't contribute to this facility, but this is a one-time project where they're renewing the seats. So based on the options available in the letter that they sent, I recommended the $2,500 amount, and that would come out of the council budget and it was not budgeted. So council can decide whether or not they wish to support it.
Okay, thank you. Questions? Councillor Olmsted.
Yeah, just a comment. I know locally, specifically within Whitewater Region, this facility gets used a ton. I speak to all kinds of people that go and see various either concerts or local musicians or acts of certain kinds. Unfortunately, the last 2 years, they haven't been able to get out and see those, but I do recognize that in our township, we have Whitewater Region has a number of artists in it that actually have played there as well. But I know whenever these outside acts come in, there seem to be a huge draw. I would say even $2,500 may be a bit slight in comparison with some of the others doing. Just seeing what the other contribution levels are, I'd be in favor. I do see that we can contribute from our own expense accounts as well, but I would encourage us maybe to bump up our financial contribution maybe to the next level, and I see that's $5,000. Arts and music and that kind of stuff is very close to my heart, as I'm a big kind of participant and lover of it. But as you guys know, with the street dance and that stuff that I had participation in, but I'd like to see us kind of step up here, and this is really, really important, in my opinion, really, really important to the area. Thank you.
So if it was to change, then the money would have to come out of each individual councillor's account, or
So
how would that work?
what we would do is it would come out of the overall council budget, and you have not budgeted that amount, but we always are under budget on certain items in the council budget. So Councillor Olmsted was the seconder. If Councillor Mackay supports that friendly amendment to 5,000, then Carmen can note it as a friendly amendment for 5,000.
Councillor Mackay.
I agree. It's a really nice hall and good acoustics. I think it's worth fixing.
And you have to realize the seats that are in there now are original. So, anyone else? Councillor Nicholson.
The question I'd have, I don't disagree at all with the recommendation. I just wonder, should we consider becoming a partner and contributing to this annually if it is in such a big support? We don't have this in our rec budget. We spend more than this on other recreational activities. We don't support the arts directly. As you can see, we don't have a budget item for it. Maybe we need to consider doing that.
I do believe, and maybe Councillor Jackson will be able to help me out on this, this did come to council years ago and it was turned down? That I don't know.
That I don't know.
I can remember it hitting the Cobden Sun. That's usually where I got a lot of my stuff. So maybe it's going back 10 years or so, maybe a little more.
Before.
They wanted contributions, and at that time for Festival Hall, it was after the school closed and it was sitting vacant, I guess. Councillor McLaughlin?
Well, I can't remember this particular item coming to council, and I've been here for quite a few, pretty nearly since the start of Whitewater Region. I missed for 3 years, but I've been here ever since, and I don't remember it coming. I know that previous council would not have they would have turned it down. That was the feeling at that time. I see it two ways. I agree with what Councillor Olmsted saying, but I also agree with Councillor Nicholson. Maybe instead of coming from council, maybe it should be the service clubs are helping to. I think I could support the $2,500, but $5,000 I think it's our tax dollars. It's our taxpayers' dollars that we're spending. And I don't know if it's the proper way to be spending it. So I don't want to see it fold, but then is it something that our taxpayers should be supporting?
Thank you. Sean? Okay, Councillor Jackson first, then Sean.
Yeah, I agree with the $5,000. It's not going to fold, just to clarify. This is for seat replacements, and it will get Whitewater Region recognized at the platinum level, which will be presented on a wall and as a sponsorship for those seats. As we know, the seats have been there since the start of time for that school or that area, and they are in much need of replacement. There are a number of families that, like Councillor Olmsted said, that participate up at Festival Hall, and not only the entertainment factor and entertainment, but also the plays that are done. I know a particular family, the Bell family, both their son and their daughter participated in a number of plays over the years, and certainly enjoyed that aspect of the cultural issue. We don't have cultural other than our museum in our municipality, and certainly that's more than some municipalities have. But I think we certainly support the sports in our community, and not every child or not every person participates in sports. This gives, to keep this going, to have those seats replaced. I mean, there's so many things that are done up at Festival Hall. There's so many groups that are involved with Festival Hall, Kiwanis group up in Pembroke, the school board, the French school board that runs the school now, certainly participates at a high level. The City of Pembroke, Laurentian Valley, Town of Petawawa certainly supports it every year at $1.25 per population, according to MPAC. So if maybe at a later time, if council wanted to consider joining that group, if you want to do dollar values, it's $1.25 per population out of the MPAC population. So that would be every year, which is a small contribution compared to what we contribute towards the sports in our community that is, again, only limited to some. This is limited to some as well, but it is another avenue that our population in Whitewater Region enjoy going to concerts. I've attended a number of concerts there as well, including when my children were young, to some children concerts that are fantastic. So I'm in favor of the platinum. Would love the diamond, but I'll settle for the platinum. Thank you.
Thank you. Sean?
So if it appeases the crowd, I am done reconciling council's 2021. So I could take the $4,200 that you're under budget, put that into reserve, and fund some of the funds in 2022 from that savings, if you so wish. So it's not as if you're starting at zero trying to find the $5,000 or $2,500 or whatever you so choose. There is $4,200 there that can get you off the ground.
Councillor Nicholson.
Yeah, no, thank you, Sean. I think that's a viable option. I think we find a way to fund it, period. If that's the easiest way to make the books work, I'm in support of it. I would just like to move a motion that we investigate becoming a partner in 2022.
Come up under notice of motion?
Once you deal with the main motion, it's relevant to this topic. So you would deal with the staff report recommendation first as amended, 5,000, and then you can deal with it within the thing. So,
Okay.
and I would just caution that we would investigate it, but it would likely not happen in 2022. It will take some time to.
Sorry, I'm a year off.
Yeah.
2023.
Yeah, just to lower expectations,
Yeah.
although we'd come back on
My
that
mistake.
should that be approved, to look at it.
Okay, so in order to vote then, we would have to have a change of the motion if that's what's so desired. Councillor Olmsted?
Yeah, sorry, I just wanted to be clear, I understand, Sean. Are you saying that we get to the 5,000 from the 4,200 in savings, or we change the motion from 5,000 to 4,200?
No, I was saying that just you can, whatever you decide to have that motion, you've got $4,200 to get you to wherever you decide to get to.
Okay.
So I'm just trying to, if the big thing was about 2,500 to 5, that
Right.
there's some there.
Okay, so we can leave the motion at the current platinum level, and we got, right, okay, thank you.
Is that the current motion or the updated motion?
It's the updated motion after the friendly amendment, yeah.
Okay. So we're ready to vote on the updated motion. Yes. All in favor on the updated motion? Opposed? Seeing none? Carried. Thank you. Now, Councillor Nicholson. Your motion now, next, if you want to. Yes.
I'd like to make a motion that staff examine the possibility of Whitewater Region becoming a partner in festival halls for 2023 and present options back to council.
Okay, so you are the firster, so we need a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson, thank you. All in favor? Or are we going to talk about it? You look confused, Councillor McLaughlin. You want to, I didn't ask for questions, so.
Yeah, I am, and I'm just kind of a little bit confused because we're making a decision, or are we just asking council or staff to come back with a report? Is that
Yes,
what
it's
we're doing?
for staff to come back with a report.
Okay, as long as it's staff coming back with a report, because I'm thinking, okay, this is 2022, and we're looking at 2023, and it could be a total different council at that time. That's where my puzzled look came from.
And not only that, it'll be a budget item too, so.
But if it's just to bring back a report, that would be fine.
Just to bring back a report, yes. Right, Councillor Nicholson? Okay. So, do we need to vote on that? Yes. Okay. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Now we move on to item 7, notice of motion. Does anyone have a notice of motion? Seeing none, thank you. We'll move on to adoption of minutes. 8.1, regular session. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the regular minutes of February 2, 2022. Motion is seconder, please. Councillor McLaughlin and Councillor Mackay. Thank you. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. 8.2, closed session. Recommendation that the Council of the Township of Whitewater Region approve the closed session minutes for February 2, 2022, understanding that they remain confidential. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Jackson and Councillor McLaughlin. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Correspondence, seeing none. Now we move to bylaws. And bylaw 22-02-1477 will be voted on as amended. So, recommendation be it resolved that the bylaws listed on the February 16, 2022 agenda be taken as read and passed. Motion and a seconder, please. Councillor Mackay and Councillor Olmsted. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Item 11, no. Item 12, adjourn at 6:52. Thank you very much.